Okay, hello again. So this part of this video will be talking about the very common myths about why veganism is not a good idea and why we have to continue eating meat, right? So a lot of these myths is what is really holding us back from even trying this, right? When I talk to people about trying veganism, they will give me some of these mythical reasons why it's not a good idea. So I need to go over some of these myths so that I can free you to really want to explore this option, right? So I'm going to go over 4 myths. Number 1, we'll talk about how veganism, myth number 1, right? Veganism is not nutritious enough. We need meat to have the energy, the protein that we need, right? That's myth number 1. Myth number 2, veganism is time consuming, it's complicated. You know, it's kind of fancy. I don't have time for this, right? Myth number 3, vegan diet is expensive. I need all kinds of, fancy ingredients. And number 4, vegan diet is not the diet we were meant to eat as human beings. We are carnivores, right? This is the myth number 4. Okay, so let's go to myth number 1. Here we're going to have a little nutrition lesson, which I will keep short, I promise. So balanced diet, we know, everyone knows, needs protein, fats, carbs, vitamins, and minerals, right? You need all 5, right, in order to feel nourished and to go about your day, right? So the big myth out there is that protein is only found in meat, right? That if we eat plants, a plant-based diet, we won't get the protein we need. And to a certain degree, this is true, right? No single food in the plant kingdom has what we call a full protein, right? Has all of the essential amino acids, right? None of the plants that you will eat will contain a complete protein, right? If you recall, proteins are made up of amino acids, and to have a complete protein, you need all essential amino acids, right? So it's true. But if you learn the art of combination, which our ancestors mastered, you actually get a full protein, complete protein. So for example, beans have all of the essential amino acids except one, methionine, but both corn and rice have the missing amino acids. So when you put them together, you have a complete protein. You have the equivalent of a chunk of meat, right? Nutritionally speaking. So that's the first myth debunked, right? You can find a complete protein in the animal kingdom if you have mastered the art of combination, which is what most vegans do not know. And that's why they are starving and they look skinny, like they're about to die, right? So we need to learn this. And what's beautiful about ancestral cuisine is that they know this, they know how to do this. And that's why I wanted to go back to Latin American traditional cuisine, because they already have this wisdom, how to combine. So now you will argue that it's true. 1 cup of beans has less protein than 1 cup of meat, right? It's true that there's less protein in the plant, but what we forget is that plant protein is better assimilated by the body. It's easier for the body to assimilate plant protein. So even if you have meat, right? You have a huge chunk, you have a lot of protein in meat, but not as much gets assimilated as plant protein. Plant protein is completely assimilated effortlessly by the body, right? So in a way, you end up with the same amount of nutrients, even if you have less protein in one and more protein in the other. Because the body assimilates plant protein better, it gets more out of it than it gets out of a chunk of meat, right? And by the way, we don't know this, right? Because in America, everything has to be big to work. But in the context of nutrition, less is more. In other words, too much protein is not good enough. And as a culture, we are eating too much protein, actually, which then becomes converted into fat. So we don't need that much protein anyways, right? Okay, so then you will tell me, okay, fine. I don't mind. I get it for the chunk of meat. But what about eggs? What about fish? Right? We need the fats, right? The healthy fats of eggs and fish, the omega-3s, the omega-6s, right? How do I find this in the plant kingdom? And you do, right? You have to know where to look. Avocados are perfect replacement for egg. chia seed, flax seeds, sunflower seeds, hemp seeds. So this is why seeds are so important, actually, seeds and avocado, right? Because they provide the fats that we usually get out of the meat. They provide the omega-3s, the omega-6s that we need. And so you can find the equivalent here if you know where to look, right? Finally, what we never eat, but traditional diets have, is tubers. So these are kind of root vegetables that especially you find in Latin America, such as cassava, sweet potato, plantain, potatoes. These are such an amazing complex carbohydrates, which will give us sustained energy and warmth, right? That often is missing in the vegan diet, right? Many vegans don't eat these things, and so they're always going around skinny and shivering, you know, about something. So, and finally, right, the vegan diet, in terms of not being nutritious, you become such an explorer when you start eating vegan. You start to explore all the wide variety of fruits and vegetables, right? And this, in a way, enriches your diet in a way that it wasn't before, where you didn't really need them or feel the need. You needed them, but you didn't feel the need, right? So just to remind you of this, right? I said this before. Actually, most traditional Latin American diets before the Spanish conquest were eating like this, right? They were mostly vegan, and with occasional meat, occasional fish, right? So in a way, this is possible. This has been shown to be possible. Okay, myth number 2, time consuming. So me as a person, to be honest, I cannot stand to waste time. I have a lot of things on my plate every day, no pun intended. And I don't have time to cook, right? I'll cook, but it better not last longer than 30 minutes, right? So all of these foods that I have, that I'm going to put in the meal plan, these dishes, I promise you, will not take more than 30 minutes to prepare. Even if you take the beans from the dry form, right? I'm gonna show you how you can cook them in the morning and just let them cook slowly so you don't have to look at them. And then you do your 30-minute or less preparation. Sometimes, honestly, it takes me like 10 minutes to prepare a meal, right? So in the middle of the day, I cannot afford, right, to have a large, you know, cooking spree. I need to get on with my day. So I never spend more than 30 minutes in the kitchen for any of these meals, right? Because I'm this kind of person who cannot stand to waste time with something like cooking. So guaranteed, all the meal plan I will give you will never go beyond 30 minutes in the kitchen. It will go less, right? Myth number 3, vegan diet is expensive. Not true, right? The staple food that I'm going to be talking about in this particular program is corn and beans, or rice and beans, which has been the poor man's diet for centuries, right? So it's actually very cheap to live on this diet. Maybe you will spend more on fruits and vegetables, but the staple is going to be much cheaper than having meat every day, right? Last myth. Vegan diet is unnatural. We are carnivores. We are not meant to eat like this, right? We're not birds. Actually, this is not true. And this is actually proved anatomically, right? The way our bodies are made, the way our digestive system is structured actually looks much more like our herbivore counterparts, and we do not resemble carnivores. So for example, unlike carnivores, we have very soft nails. We don't have claws, right? We also have just 2 tiny canine teeth, right? Tiny, like a decoration. No use to tear meat, right? We don't have large canine teeth that can go into, you know, carcasses and so forth, right? We also have flat molars like cows in order to grind grain, right? So in terms of nails and teeth, we look like cows more than we look like wolves. Number 2, we actually have less acidity in the stomach than carnivores, which means that we are not able to break down meat as fast as carnivores, right? Carnivores the meat comes, paf, it's attacked by the acidity, goes through very quickly, which is good, because if the meat stays too long, anywhere, it begins to rot. And this is the problem when it comes to us eating it, right? Because we have less acidity, takes longer to process, and so the meat actually begins to putrefy or to rot in our system, creating more toxins than if we were eating a carrot, for instance, right? Third, unlike carnivores, which have very short intestinal tracts, right? Ours goes forever, like cows again, right? Very long. Why? Because it's actually designed to process vegetables, right? And so the meat, which passes quickly through carnivore stomachs because they're short, actually takes forever in our stomachs. And again, you have the issue of the rotting meat. The meat stays too long. Actually, meat to digest takes about 2 days. Just put meat outside on your countertop and watch what happens to it in 2 days. How fresh it is then. That's how it is in your stomach, right? So in that sense, because we don't seem to be made to digest meat, the meat actually, there's this problem that the meat, because it stays so long in our system, begins to rot, right? So we'll talk about, when we talk about where to go next, we'll talk about how to avoid this as much as possible, and I'll give you some tips. But in general, right, this is just the last myth that we are meant to be carnivores. Actually, when you look at the biological makeup of our digestive system, it would seem rather that we were meant to be herbivores and not carnivores. Okay, now that we've debunked the myths, let's go into the benefits, which will be the next video. See you then.